Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning from wherever you're joining us from today. My name's Sarah, and I'm the Program and Event Manager at the Reactor in Sydney, Australia. Welcome to a Microsoft Reactor Sydney live stream event and another episode of our Devs Down Under series. I would like to welcome today Damian Brady. So Damian is a developer advocate for GitHub based in Brisbane, Australia. He has over 20 years experience in software development and consulting in a broad range of industries. In Australia, he has co-organised the Brisbane.net user group and launched the annual DDD Brisbane conference. Today, he will be talking you through planning, tracking, and collaboration in GitHub. You will see in the comment section today, there is the check-in link with the event code 14283. Please check in and you'll find additional resources from today that both Damian and Microsoft have provided. We'll be speaking for about 45 minutes with hopefully some time for questions at the end. However, do send us your questions throughout, and between both Damian and myself, we'll try and flag and answer as many as possible. We'll also share with you at the conclusion of the session a link to our feedback survey with the same event code 14283. So if you have time to fill that out this evening or wherever else you are in the world, that would be great. This will also go on our YouTube channel after, where the link is in the check-in link. And so this will be an on-demand version available for you straight after today's session. So if there's anything you've missed, you can reference back at any time you like. But for now, I'll give the floor over to Damian to begin. So thank you, Damian, and over to you.
Cool. Thanks, Sarah, and hi, everybody. It's really good to be back kind of virtually, I guess, in the Sydney Reactor. I think Sydney Reactor was actually the last place that I went for work. So it's nice to be back there, even if it's virtual. Now, when I last was in the Reactor, I actually worked for Microsoft. So I moved at the end of last financial year. So kind of the end of June, I moved across from Microsoft Developer Relations to GitHub Developer Relations. And part of the reason for that is that I was following the DevOps stuff, the DevOps tooling and the DevOps processes that Microsoft is investing very heavily in. And a lot of that has been focused on GitHub. Now, just to preempt the question, Azure DevOps is still around and not going anywhere and has well over 100 developers working actively on that product. So it's not disappearing anywhere, but you'll find a lot of the new kind of shiny stuff is coming out with GitHub. So GitHub is kind of the place to be for a developer relations kind of person like me. So you can reach me now at GitHub, DamoVisa at GitHub, or DamoVisa on Twitter or on GitHub itself. Always open to questions and things like that as well. So feel free to hit me up. So today's plan, we're going to be talking about planning and tracking with GitHub. And I originally kind of sat down and thought, I'll work out a whole big script and a story to go along with it about all the different things that GitHub can do from a planning and tracking perspective. And as I went through it, I realized that there's so many different features and so many forks and ways that I could go that I thought I'd probably make it a little less formal. So hopefully, as Sarah mentioned, there are comments. If you can ask some questions or ask me to drill into certain areas, I'd love this to be a bit more interactive. Otherwise, yes, I do have a script. I have a process I can go through. I'm going to be largely doing demos. So the three things I want to talk to you about in particular, I want to show you issues and projects and discussions. These are kind of three different interrelated parts of GitHub. Then I'm going to show you some other stuff that kind of highlights how integrated all of these things are together, and then take some questions, I guess, but mainly I'm just going to wing it. I'm just going to go through the product itself and show you how easy it is to use. Now, you might be familiar with issues with GitHub. You might be familiar with projects in GitHub. You may be familiar with discussions in GitHub. Hopefully, even if you are, I'll be showing you a lot of new things, especially when it comes to projects. There's a whole new project planning set of tools and features in GitHub that are in private beta at the moment. So I'm going to show you a lot of that stuff, and hopefully you'll learn a few things and get excited for the upcoming public beta that's not too far away. Right. So enough talk. Let's look at some demos. So let's just switch to the demo page. So this is really the first place you should go. And this is github.com. Let me see if I've got these set up right. github.com/features/issues. So if you go there, there's a whole lot of, there's a video with a nice little show reel. You can sign up for the beta, and I would strongly recommend that you do that. I can talk a little bit more about getting into that beta at the end. And then a whole lot of details about how projects look and how you can manage it. We're going to walk through some of that today. Some features to do with issues themselves, conversations, rich videos, and all sorts of stuff. So I'm going to go through a lot of that stuff now. The first thing I'm going to look at is issues themselves. So issues you may be familiar with as basically the way of tracking your work, like the different items that your team is doing. So I've got a couple of little demo projects here. There's one under the Demo Visa Inc. Organization, and the repository is called equipment. There's no code there. I'm actually just using this to track the issues that I've got, or the different pieces of equipment that I want. There's a few things that I've got. I've got these kind of cool rollerblade office chair wheels. I have a problem, by the way. I don't have the Lego world map. I've got a half-done kind of, you can probably see right there, a half-done Lego piano typewriter I don't have. I've got a parent item here, and I'll drill into that a little bit more. And then some green screen and teleprompters and things like that. Ultimately, though, these are individual issues that would normally represent pieces of work that I want to do. And they're pretty basic. It's the title, which can obviously contain emojis, which is very important, and then some content. So the content itself is what we call GitHub flavored Markdown. So I can easily do headings. I can use all of this stuff. I can preview to see what these things are going to look like. I can also do quite rich stuff. So for example, I might want to throw a GIF in there. Let's just pull that up. I'm just going to drag this in basically from a browser. It'll upload that image, and there's a whole lot of different files. You can do movie files, you can do images and GIFs. And then in the preview, it'll show the images there. So you can do quite rich content in these fields. So sure, let's update that. It's an open issue now anyway, which it probably shouldn't be because I've actually got it. You can see that you can assign it to different people. So I've got Mish is in this org as well, or I can clear it. I can add labels, and I can manage those labels myself. I've just chosen a few emojis and names for my labels, but if you go to edit labels, you can add new ones, change the colors if you want, give it descriptions, label names, do any kind of emoji stuff if you want. Pretty handy stuff, just for highlighting and categorizing these issues themselves. So this is all pretty standard stuff. We've also got milestones, so I can set milestones to V1, V2. I can set these with particular due dates if you want. So I can configure these milestones. If we go back to, it'll be in settings, but I can get to it with labels as well. If I look at my milestones, I've got V1 and V2. I can edit this one, set a due date, give it a description, and then assign issues to those milestones. So I can manage those a bit better as well. Let's just go back a little bit. So this is all pretty, standard stuff. I get deep linking as well to other pull requests. I can set up notifications, so I can subscribe to notifications. And I can also do things like pin issues. So if I decide that this is an important issue, I can pin that to the start of that issues page here. So by way of example, I've got another issue, another project here called $1 Billion Startup. This is going to be my $1 billion startup, but we found a critical bug here that no customers can log in. And this is pinned up to the top of the issues, so people will see it immediately. Pinning issues is really handy for things like really high critical bugs and things like that, or even epics or goals for longer periods of time, or for community projects, for open source projects. It's really good as a, hey, welcome to the project, read this issue first, so that you don't have to troll through all of these issues to find them, to find the ones you care about. You can see here that I've got a number of issues for this project, my $1 billion startup. And they've got, tags. We've got a few people on them. Some of them have tasks. Some of them have milestones. And we're even doing things like parent tasks. So this is just a label that I've given for a parent task. But right here, I've got a list of other issues. So if I edit this, you can see that all these are links to other issues in an unordered list with checkboxes. So I get this kind of deep linking. If I hit hash on here, I can add a link to that one, for example. And that will provide this deep link into other issues in that project. You can see when we have these checklists as well, we get these number of tasks done. So I want to just talk about that for a sec. So we've got our rich Markdown, our content, we've got labels, we've got milestones, we've got all sorts of stuff like that. We can pin our issues, but we might want to break these issues down as we do our work. So let's say we open this trademark application one that Mish opened just recently. They are on an update as they go. So let's say I'm from the legal team. Let's edit this and say, right, I want to do a task list. So this is the little icon here, add a task list, or I could just type it in Markdown. We'll say, all right, get logo finalize, and then, register. Update that comment, and we have these checkboxes, and they will respond if I go and check that. They'll become checked and unchecked and so on without having to go and edit. But the other thing I can do is if I do this in the right format, I think that's right. Hopefully I've got this enabled here. There you go. So right on the right here, if I hover over these, I could get this kind of convert to issue button here. So what I can do is just click on that, get logo finalized, and it will actually go and create an issue for me in this repository with that title, hopefully, and provide that deep link from this issue to the other one. Not sure what's going on here. Let's just refresh this. There we go. Get logo finalized, and so it's updated the contents of this, so it's really just a link to that issue. But I can drill into that, and this is an actual issue. It's tracked in that parent issue that we can see. So we get this kind of hierarchy. And in here, if I really wanted to, I could break that down even further and further. So you get this kind of hierarchy of these issues, which is really handy. Right. So one thing that we see a lot in open source projects is the fact that anybody can really open an issue if you give the community permission to open an issue, which means that it can be kind of hard to control what those issues look like. I mean, I could open a new issue here and then just dump a whole lot of stuff in there, and it takes time for a maintainer of an open source project to go and close those and say, this isn't enough information. We haven't, you haven't provided us the things we care about. So for a while, we've had the idea of these issue templates, and there's some good docs on this, but ultimately issue templates are a way of saying when somebody creates a new issue, you can provide them a template, which is something that they should fill out. And this gets used a lot, especially in open source projects, but also in private projects within organizations. It's a great way of kind of making sure that people are conforming to your standards for these issues as well. I'm just going to jump back to my equipment repository because this is where I do a lot of playing. And I'll create a new issue, but this time I'm going to use templates. Now there's two types of templates. There's issue templates, which are the kind of existing legacy ones. And then there's a new one that we've got called issue forms. So an issue template is an example like this. So when I go to create a new issue, rather than creating a new blank one, which I can still do, I can say, create one from a template, this piece of equipment. So if I get started on that, it really just starts with, a description. I can choose a different type if I want. As part of that template, I can define, when somebody creates an issue with this template, apply these labels and, basically customize the starting point of this template. It's pretty clear here. We're looking at a table in Markdown. So it wants me to fill out, the URL for this piece of equipment, the approximate price, a priority, and a reason. But ultimately, I could just, if I really wanted to, just delete all of that and put whatever I want in it. So it only goes so far. It tells the community or the developers what you want to see in this issue, obviously to help you to help them, so that you won't just immediately close it and say this is not what we want. But it doesn't really enforce that to a great extent. So instead, we can use issue forms, which are kind of issue templates, pumped up a little bit. There's a bit more in them. So I've done the same thing with an issue form. And now you can see I've actually got fields to fill out. And these fields are generally typed, and they have, required fields, and probably in the future, I don't have the actual details, but I imagine there'll be some other validation that you'd be able to add to these. So this will make sure that I add, something reasonable here, a description of it, a URL, a price, some descriptions. So what is it and why? And then I've also got the option of drop downs for, priorities and things like that, any other details, and that's a full markdown field as well. So it does the same kind of thing, but it gives a much nicer UI. Ultimately, what you get at the end of this is just markdown anyway. So you could go and edit that and put whatever you want in, but it's a really good way of guiding people around the right direction. Now, to actually do those, to create those, let's see if we've got, there we go. So in our code, there's a .github, which is where all of the kind of GitHub specific stuff is. If you're familiar with Actions, you'd know that Actions are in .github/workflows. But .github/issue template is where these templates live. So the equipment template markdown is the template itself. So we can have a look at what that looks like. Let's just look at the raw version. And so you can see it looks very similar to what we were given. There's a little bit of metadata at the top, but it's pretty basic. The form, though, is a little bit more involved, and there are some great docs on this. I'm not going to go through it in a great deal of detail, but you can see it's rendered it nicely, so I can see what it looks like. But if I look at the raw version of that, it's YAML, which is everybody's favorite markup language. And so we can see this body gives us a bunch of inputs. There's a markdown input, a name input. We can see things like a text area, so that's a rich text one, or a drop down with these options. So we can build this out. We can apply labels and all sorts of other stuff to it as well. So we can do really similar things, but it kind of guides people a little bit more nicely down the direction they want to go. Paul Glavich asked, can you sort by those priorities, or is that just an arbitrary field? So that I'm assuming you mean with the creating a new issue with the issue forms. So when you get the priority here, can you sort by those ones? You can. That's coming up in the next bit where we talk about projects. So there's a lot of power in the projects that we have as well. So stay tuned. I'm getting to that very soon. This is really all that I wanted to show you with issues. There's a few other things that are really great. We saw that deep linking between the issues. You can see when we grab an issue that there's a bunch of other things we can do to it. We can lock that conversation. We can close issues. We get links to pull requests and things like that. We can delete them. We can transfer between repositories as well if we care about, and then we can pin them so that up to 3 of these issues can be at the top, which is all very cool. But how do we manage these? At the moment, these are just a list of issues that we have, and we could probably filter it based on these. So just say I only want to see office equipment. I can. These are basically just all the filters that I have. You can find items that way. You can even do, if you press, oh no, that's for code search. So you can filter by these things as well. So I don't know, author is, I don't know, me. So you can do all these filters, but that's not really helping you manage it. Projects is where we have traditionally done this. And so these are the existing projects that everybody has access to right now. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so you can see what these look like. But these are basically just, if you can think about it as a Trello board to a large extent. There's a bit of power in these. I mean, you can add cards for issues that you have, and then pull them into the project or pull them out of the project. So some you may not want to see in that project, so you don't have to have every issue in your project. So you can customize it a little bit like that. There's, activity and all sorts of stuff. There's even some automation that happens with these as well. So you can manage the automation between these. So when you are in the to-do column, if issues are newly added to your project, then you can add them to that column, although want is the default one there. Move pull requests there when they're newly added and so on. So there's some automation that belongs there. You can see you get some kind of rich, details about what that issue is and so on. You can move them around really nicely. So it's all very good. What I want to show you though is the newer project stuff. There's a whole new kind of way of managing projects that is in GitHub now. So while projects here it kind of belongs to this repository, that doesn't really give you the freedom to manage projects that run across multiple repositories, for one thing. And that's one of the reasons that the new projects was created, to manage things with a little bit more flexibility. The other reason is that this board view is kind of one view into the issues that you have, but it's not always the most useful view. When I was speaking to the issues product team, somebody made a comment which I found really interesting, which is that the competition for pretty much any software product is a spreadsheet, is an Excel spreadsheet. So whether it's tracking your project or the customers that you have or the orders that they've been made, you can always do this stuff in a spreadsheet. And that is often how people will work. They'll work at some point with boards and things like this for their software projects. But at some point, a manager's probably just going to be writing stuff into a spreadsheet, and they'll translate that at some point across. So that idea of seeing everything in a big grid was one of the drivers behind one of the main views for projects. All right, so let's go to the new projects. So I did mention that these were across repositories. So the first thing you'll notice is that this is in an org, not in a project. So this is in, let's see, in GitHub Orgs, Demo Visa Inc. So I'm not in a specific project at all. I'm just in the organization. And if I go to projects, I can see the existing legacy ones. I don't have any in this this org here, but I have projects, which is the new beta one. So let's jump. Actually, no, let's create a new one to start off with. So what we're doing is we're creating a brand new project to work across repositories with a whole lot of custom fields, multiple views and things like that. And when we start, you can see straight away, we basically just get a grid view. If I want to add an issue, then I will just say hash exactly the same way as I do. Hang on, let me just zoom in a little bit. It's a bit small. Exactly the same way as I'd link to an issue. But now I have access to all of these different repositories. So I'm going to do this for the $1 billion startup. And then we have, our list of issues here. So let's just grab a few of these. Keyboard access for this is actually quite good too. So let's just do this trademark application. We'll do get logo finalized. Let's do a front end. And then if I wanted to, I could also add from, if I really needed the camera lens to do all this stuff, I could add that too. My usual stuff, like I can, sort comments and things like that. Oh, got a little bit of. It's all, by the way, beta, remember? So if you get little artifacts like that not disappearing, that's part of the beta. It's all deliberate. So we have these columns. I'm just going to rename this what is it? $1 billion project. I might rename this view as well to table or backlog. Let's say backlog. But this is my backlog. I can assign people here, so I can do this directly. So I can get bduggy on the trademark application. I can change the status of this to my to-do, in progress, and done. Now these statuses are for this project. So if I click on the settings here, I can change these statuses to whatever I want. So to do in progress done. Let's say we have a blocked one as well. We want to move that up. We'll save that. Return to PPD. So now we have these different statuses. We also have in here the ability to add new fields. So there's labels that we've got as well. So you can see these come across, these labels. Let's just hide that because we're running out of room. I can also set the repository here as well. So these, you can see if they come from different projects. So let's hide that one. And then milestones as well. So Glav, you were asking before about whether you could sort based on status. Let's just do, this is a bunch in to do, and then in progress. Just to do that. So you can sort by these ones, alpha, beta and so on. So you can, sorry, A to Z or ZA. So you can sort by those. The other thing you can do is group by those. So I might want to see all of the to-do items and all of the in-progress ones. Or I'll just collapse the to-dos and say I just want to see the in-progress. I could even go further and say I want to filter, or Control F, and just say where the status is, oops. To-do. I only want to see the to-do ones, for example. At any point, I can then just say I want to save this view. So this is my to-do backlog. And there's no point having that sorting anymore or grouping anymore because I've only got the to-do ones. And so I can kind of map this the way I want. Say I want the status to be first. The other thing I might want to do is add fields. So let's add a new field for these, which would be, I don't know, let's say we want to assign it to a particular, or just tag an external team or something. So I can say this extra field that I'm adding is text, a number, a date, or a single select. So let's just say a single select. And there's a legal team, a design team. This is all off the top of my head, by the way, and an SRE team, because everybody knows they're not part of your dev org. I did that mainly to trigger Damian McLennan there. Oh, I've clicked away from that. Sorry. Let's do this, single select, legal, the other one, design, and then your SRE team, for example. So save that, and that field now lets me choose these. So where do they turn up, you might ask? Let's say trademark application is definitely legal. So if I click on that link in a new window, I'll get this opened, and you can see the projects that this belongs to and any of the fields that belong to that. So we can see the status is in to do, the team is legal, and I can change them from here. So on that right-hand pane of the issue itself, I get all of these extra fields. If I want to go back to the project, I can click on that project there and come back here. The other thing I might want to do, let's just get rid of those, is I might want to make some changes here to the filter it or do something another way. Control K is another great way of doing that. Control K is kind of the command one. Or I might want to view this as a board, let's say. So we have our to-do, in progress, and blocked fields. And I can obviously drag them back and forth. I can also change what appears in these items as well. So let's say I want the labels to appear on these two. So now the labels are appearing on those cards as well. So I get a bit of customization there. I can drag them around. I can delete them from the project if I don't want them as well. I can also, as of very recently, hold down Control in Windows, highlight a few of them, and then delete them all in one go. Oops. If I just press delete, which I don't want to do. And if I want this board view to be a new view rather than saving them, I can save them to a new view, and this can be my board view. Then I get my backlog, which I hadn't turned into a board, and then my board view that's in there as well. I can also do all my filtering and grouping and all sorts of, or not grouping so much, but all my filtering and stuff in here as well. So let's say I just wanted to do filter by tables, and so only the backend stuff will be here. And then I could save that view as, this is the backend teams board, for example, and have these deep links to the teams or to the boards that the teams care about. What else did I want to show you in here? Oh yeah, actually I'll just jump over to see if there are any questions. When will the new projects be generally available? The answer I have to give you is soon. Sorry, I can't give you anything more than that, but it is actually soon. So it will be in beta still for a little while, but right now it's in private beta and it will be public beta soon. We're enabling a lot more organizations at the moment. Just in the last couple of weeks, we've turned it on for several hundred more organizations, and there's several thousand who are using it at the moment. And I think, I don't know how many, but we're getting pretty close to 1,000 who are using it as their day-to-day, this is how they manage their projects. So even though it's a beta and we're still, collecting feedback and making changes, where there are teams that are using it for their, for their primary way of managing their work. But the answer to the question, when will it be available? Soon. So sign up to the GitHub Issues beta as well, and they'll onboard you at some point soon. So the other thing, new projects just for organizations. Yes, so the reason it's just for organizations is because it's across projects. So it depends whether you mean organizations or individual users. My understanding is that it's done at an org level rather than a user level. So we can test that out, I think. I would have to be opted in. Go to my personal one. Yeah, my projects. Yeah, so we only have the existing projects. I'm fairly sure it's only done at an org level, but I might have to check that. I know there's been a bit of movement on that, what's available to orgs and what's available to users lately, but I think it's just to orgs. Templates for the project boards. So for example, in an org, you always want to have a to-do, committed, blocked, in progress, in test, done. The answer is not yet, no. That is a piece of feedback that we've heard. And so they're working out how they could probably share that information. At the moment, no, not right now. Or defining teams, can you export that board definition and important? Yeah, same answer, unfortunately. Right now, no. But yeah, product's changing pretty constantly. We are still in beta, so that will change. All right. One other thing I really wanted to show you as well, which is quite cool, is that you can just add a draft issue. So if I wanted to say, well, that trademark application actually requires, I don't know, a code of conduct before they'll, before you apply for a trademark because of whatever reason. I can just put that in as a draft issue, and you can see it's got this kind of dotted line, which means that it's not an actual issue in a repository at the moment. And so I can't do things like assign it. I can give it a status because these are specific to the boards themselves rather than the issue. Sorry, the project itself rather than the issue. So I can set values for these, but things that are native to issues themselves, like the assignees, I can't do that. What I can do though is convert to an issue. So I could say I want to convert this to an issue. It has to know which repository I'm going to add it to. So let's do it for the $1 billion startup. And now I can, add these details in here. So right from here, this is really handy for planning as well. So what I could do is have a, let's see if we go to board. sorry, if we have our code of conduct, let's just remove that field filter on board. You can see that this has no status at the moment. That column has kind of appeared. We might be looking at the work that we've done in the last time and then go to our backlog. We'll filter based on, status. Oops. Again, filter by status, no status. So I could just sit there and dump a whole lot of issues as we think of them, and then do that planning as part of the, the sprint planning session, and convert them to issues that belong in the correct repositories and things like that. So bulk delete is new, and it's super useful for this little demo. A couple of questions. Could the project issues tasks be automated with GitHub Actions, for example, closed when a PR is merged? The answer is yes. So right now, the automation for the existing projects, the legacy projects that are repository specific, is quite good. You saw that there's some basic stuff that we can automate immediately. The automation at time of speaking, so right now when this is being recorded and presented, the automation is a little bit roll it yourself. So there are some docs on how to do it with an API, but if you look at, for example, what's an API? Automation. Exhibiting all of my search history here. So if you look at projects beta, automating projects, this is an example workflow which they've given for, what does this one do? This example workflow will add something to the board when you do a PR. So there's a lot of work in here. There's some GraphQL queries to get the details of those projects when a pull request is ready for review, and then some more GraphQL queries to assign those to your project itself. There's a whole bunch of them to set item statuses and things like that. So there's a really good workflow. Like, this is a really good walkthrough of how it all works, but it's not as simple as kind of clicking a button and saying, oh, when it goes here, then do this. I will stress as well that this is at time of stream and at time of recording. I know that there's a lot of discussions around how best to automate those projects. So don't expect this to be the final form either. I don't have any deep details. If you really want to, though, knock yourself out. I haven't gone to this extent yet, but there you go. So yes, you can do it. Right now, it's not the easiest thing in the world. The link for sign up is just github.com issues, github.com features issues. So if you want to sign up there, that's the place to go. Cool. All right. What else was I going to show you? So we've got our tables and boards. We've got our draft issues. We can do those ones pretty quickly. And converting to issues from the draft as well. Now, just before I move on a little bit, we've only got about 5 minutes left, and I really wanted to touch on discussions. Is there anything else that I haven't shown you in here that you would like to see? Yeah, there's a lot of power in here. And one thing, I think one of the design principles here is that we're trying to be inclusive of a lot of different ways of working. So rather than say, here is the way that you should manage your projects with sprints, and they should be called this, and they should have these milestones, and this is the way you organize your project. Rather, we're trying to give you a nice way of customizing your views to meet whatever your team wants to do. So milestones are really handy for, I've got them as Q3, Q4, but you could also do, for example, one way that I've seen it done is have an iteration field and just have that as a single select, and then 1 sprint 2. keep that in there. And then maybe we can do those ones as 2. And then you could have a filter on sprint 2, and that could be your new sprint 2 board. And so you could manage these, kind of as you go. This is your sprint 2 board that you're working on. Everything's still in that same project, but you've kind of customized your view very much around the way that you want to work. So one of the more powerful features in this question from Paul, one of the more powerful features in Azure DevOps was custom queries. Any plans to do something here, something similar here? So the filtering here is not bad. Custom queries you can probably do via the GraphQL API. Now, I don't know GraphQL very well, but my understanding is it lets you really drill into what that graph of data looks like. So whether you can get that to appear on this board, I don't think that's around the corner. I think you've pretty much got to work with whatever you have at the moment. So filter by these ones, and you can have multiple filters as well. So excluding the legal team, and then you could have let's to do, for example. So you can do some deeper queries, but not to the extent that Azure DevOps did let you do. Adam Kogan, hey Adam. Wondering your opinion on how well it works for Scrum sprint tracking, where we get an Azure DevOps-like dashboard with these projects. So answer to question 1 is right now, and again in beta, right now you can manage your sprints a little bit the way that you want. For example, this iterations field at the moment is just a drop down. I could have it done by date, so I could add a new field that has a date, and you could manage it that way if you wanted to have your end date for a sprint or something like that. We have heard a lot of feedback around iterations being a bit more first class. So you can use milestones at the moment and manage your sprints that way. But it's not quite as, you still have to manage all your milestones and set due dates and things like that. There is a case to be made for having iterations as a bit more of a first-class citizen. So I'd have to say, stay tuned for that. Right now, there are, again, hundreds of teams who are using this in a sprint fashion, so for Scrum or something like that, and they're using it day to day. So you can absolutely do it, but a few things are not kind of first-class like your iterations. The second question, will we get an Azure DevOps-like dashboard with these projects? Not right now, but I believe if you look at this layout, there's a table view and a board view. There is definitely going to be some kind of timeline view soon, and I can tell you that because that's on the product page itself. These are kind of just ways of showing you this information rather than a dashboard, though. The dashboards themselves, I don't think are planned at the moment. They may be deep on the backlog, but I don't think there's anything like here's a heads-up display of everything that's going on right now. Again, the API is available, so if you wanted to build something like that, you absolutely can, but I don't think that's high on the priority list right now. Cool. All right, just before we stop, I just want to talk about, so here's an existing one, an existing project for this billion-dollar startup. I just want to show you what you might end up doing. I've got a parent label here. So I could go to this QA testing during my sprint planning, set up a few of these QA customer, and then there we go. QA, I don't know, UI or something like that. Update that comment, convert these to issues. So I think I just need to do a bit of a refresh and convert those to issues and then pull them into the projects as well and manage them that way. So this might be the way that I start breaking down my work in when it comes to doing that work day to day. The other thing I wanted to show you is discussions. So discussions are handy for They're handy for teams that are working privately as well, but they're really, really handy for community discussions. So, for example, this is the Next.js repository, which is public in the Vercel org. And you can see they've got some pinned items in their discussions. And this is really just kind of a way of talking to the community about, what stuff people want and problems that they have, help that they need, show and tell, ideas. It's a great way of kind of providing support for your organizations. Sorry, let me just jump back to this one, my $1 billion startup. I've got discussions enabled here, and you can see there's a bit of depth in here as well. So let's say somebody has asked, should we remove the date of birth from the customers? This guy asked it. Good question. Mish suggested, yeah, great idea. We don't need to. And so right from here, I can pin that discussion the same way as I pin issues, or I can create an issue from that discussion, and it gives me a link to that discussion. So discussed in here. And then I can create the issue straight from that community discussion as well. Then I can go and add it to a project. I can manage that and prioritize it the way I want to too. So discussions is a really good starting point from that too. Cool. That's the main thing I wanted to show you. I'd also want to highlight two things just before I go. One is that the GitHub blog /changelog is a great way to find out what stuff is coming up and what stuff we've just announced. So if you have a look at github.blog/changelog, that shows you the kind of the new stuff that's coming out. There's a few items on the new GitHub issues. So every few weeks they release a new blog post saying this is what we've got to highlight, here are the new features that are in there. Custom fields, bug fixes, group buys enabled for milestones. You can do no status. It'll hide it if it's empty. So a lot of these are quite new. I think this blog post, a lot of the things I showed you, 3rd of September, US format. So a lot of them are quite new. So that's one thing. The other thing I would point you to is GitHub Universe. That is, a lot of people are asking when things are going to be announced and released and GA'd and things like that. GitHub Universe is one of the events that tends to happen. So it's free, it's online. It turns out that there's about 2 hours of broadcast stuff a day, I think, and then there's a bunch of on-demand sessions. There's some live interactive sessions as well. At this point, I think I'm actually doing one on code spaces, which will be quite cool. And there's some really cool keynotes and things, all free. So make sure you subscribe to that as well. Awesome. All right. That is all the stuff that I had for you. Let's just go to this last little slide. This is how to contact me. That is how to get to the feature itself, github.com/features/issues if you want to sign up. But feel free to ping me on Twitter or GitHub or email, and I'll get back to any questions. But I think I'm around for another 10 minutes if people have questions. Is that right, Sarah?
Hi, Damian. Yeah, so we've got a couple of minutes for questions. If anybody wants to ask them now, please do in that comments section. Just a reminder that I've put in that check-in link again as well with the event code 14283. And if you guys all have time to fill out the survey, that would be great with the same event code. And Paul has a question for you, so I'm just going to pop that one up on the screen.
So that's one. Can you DM me on Twitter, Paul? The short answer is probably. I can't make commitments, but probably. Anthony Borton says he's going to keep blocking it. We'll see as the deeper tentacles into the blog.
Great. Well, thank you to everyone for engaging in that comment section. We had some really good questions throughout the session that Damian managed to answer at the time. Thank you to everyone for tuning in, and thank you again for Damian for joining us at the Reactor. Hopefully we can have you back in person in the near future, hopefully, if not online again. And to everyone else, have a good rest of your afternoon, evening, or morning, and we'll see you next time for another Microsoft Reactor live stream event.
Thanks, everyone.